Good evening. Today is January 11th, 2018, if you can believe that. I'd like to call this meeting to order, and starting with a work session to discuss capital project options. So, okay, everyone, thanks for being patient. We're just running a little bit over on our discussion, and we'll now start the regular meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, there are no agenda modifications. May I have a motion to adopt tonight's agenda, please?
So moved. Second.
You got those? Yes. And any discussion on that? All in favor? Opposed? Thank you. Okay, upcoming events. On Tuesday, January 16th at 7 o'clock is the North Park Winter Concert at FDR. On Wednesday, January 17th, 7 o'clock at FDR also is the FDR Prisms Concert. On Wednesday, January 24th at 6 o'clock, there's the next DLT meeting, and that's at the district office. And on Thursday, January 25th at 7 o'clock, is the next regular Board of Education meeting, also at the district office. That brings us to Pride. We got any Pride items?
Leah, do you want to?
I have some track and field news.
Great.
Okay, it's a little bit messy.
Okay.
So at the Millrose Trials last night, Sarah Trainer ran a 4:54.48 mile and came in third place. The boys 4x8 finished 5th, running in 8:03.15. That's their new fastest time. Last Sunday, the boys 4x8 ran in 8:05 to win, and they set a new school record. Also on Sunday, the girls 4x8 ran a 10:06 and set a new school record to finish 5th overall. Sydney Tomaine had a 9-foot pole jump and set a new school record. Ramo Williams ran a 6:90 in the 55-meter dash, and the boys 4x4 ran a 3:35.32 in a new school record at the Millrose Trials last night.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else have any other?
Yeah, I've got a few. Well, you'll cover the concerts, right?
Sure.
I don't have any statistics on basketball, but I've seen some good basketball games. I know the JV girls won last Saturday against Kingston, and the varsity girls played very hard but did not win. But it was a great game. That was a modified JV and varsity.
They were outsized more than outplayed.
Yeah. We had North Park Elementary was School of the Week recently in the newspaper. It's Laura Collins' second grade classroom with her Community Foundation grant for Veteran Buddies. We got some nice press coverage, great opportunity for veterans to interact with our young folks. Very nice picture here of Mr. Doug Heater. He was one of the veterans. Air Force, right. In one of the in this event. So thanks to Laura for writing the grant and for opening her classroom up to veterans.
It was a great event.
Students.
It was quite extensive. It went from 10 to afternoon, so it was a couple hours worth. We did a engineering project, which was kind of fun for me. So it was the second year that I've attended, and it's just a wonderful thing to watch the kids. Because they've learned a little bit about what makes this country great and why it's free. So it's I thought it was very good.
Great. And yesterday, was the very first home wrestling match in 35 years. We were so proud, and I'd like to thank the board for supporting bringing wrestling back to Hyde Park. It was at Haviland Middle School. It was an incredible event. We have, it's not 11, it's a little bit more than 11, maybe 16 or so students on the team. 5 of them are girls. I went with my dad. I do have to say that when I became a superintendent, he only asked me to do one thing, and that was to bring the wrestling program back to Hyde Park. So he did come with me, and it was just an incredible event. And I really need to give a shout out to the coach, Nick Clare. He has worked with our students for approximately 6 weeks. They actually had incredible technique and skill. 6 of them won their matches. They were up against a team, Saugerties, that has always had a wrestling program, has a year-round wrestling program, where students have the opportunity to, go to clinics in the spring and the summer. And our students did really well. Most of them have really never experienced wrestling, so they didn't come from wrestling families. So not only did Coach Clare teach them technique, skill, etiquette, but he really prepped them to go out there and hold their own. So it was very well attended. I was incredibly pleased. Our new athletic director, Tom Cunningham, we both come from huge wrestling families. He himself has officiated wrestling matches 4 times at the state level. He coached. His father is in the National Wrestling Hall of Fame, along with my uncle and 2 of my cousins. So this was a big event for several people. Eric and Camille were there last night to support their team. So after 35 years, we have brought back a sport that does attract students, and we hope to keep it going. And our plan is to move it up to JV and then to varsity.
Okay, there was also some concerts. Last night was Ralph Smith at the high school. I think it was very well received. It's a nice venue for the stage here would barely fit their combined strings and orchestra together, and they filled the stage, and it was very good. It was no, this is going to sound wrong, but it was also short. I mean, it was, they made this thing, they played their song, they sang their song, and it was done. And I was able to go to the FDR PTA meeting that was in progress. So it was not that that's, it's just that it was run nicely. People didn't get up in the middle of it. When something ended, nobody left, just like it annoys me at the middle school. There also was, there was another middle school concert between the last meetings, also very good. It was the smaller one. So
I went to that one too, yeah.
Yeah, so everybody should go to these I know it sounds silly, but they're really enjoyable, and it's great to see kids doing something that they're having a lot of fun and enjoying. It makes other decisions worthwhile, knowing that you're really doing something good. Mm-hmm. Really.
Yeah.
So, is there any other pride? Or no? All right. You got anything for Superintendent's Report?
Just a date, because it happens to be this Monday. As a reminder, this Monday is Martin Luther King Day. Our students have off. They're also engaged in several activities in classrooms so that they understand what Martin Luther King Day is all about. So there is definitely an instructional component in addition to having a day off. On Monday, as well, is the Katy Filiberty Invitational. That's a gymnastics meet that is held. This is the 5th annual Katy Filiberty Invitational. It is also going to be the largest gymnastics invitational meet that we have held to date. There will be 113 gymnasts participating, with more school districts represented than ever before. The furthest one traveling is all the way coming down from Bethlehem, New York. So that starts at approximately 11 o'clock on Monday.
Cool. Okay, moving on to our capital projects options report. Dan, you're up.
Good evening. So we have been charged with taking a look at the current option that was in place that you saw at a previous meeting. We have gone back. Back to the drawing board and have taken a hard look at 2 other options as well, which I'd like to present tonight, which still keep your same priorities in place, but scale the project back to certainly to some degree, and make the whole project a little bit more efficient. So with that, I'm going to see if I can operate this. We're into apparently not very well. So Elliot will come up and show me how to run it. Yeah, there we go. All right.
Just slow.
Everybody's a little bit different. So that's just an existing conditions plan of FDR. We're going to start there. Pointer on this, Elliot, it's in the center. So when we looked at and presented option 1 previously, option 1 was showing basically reconstructing both pods, turning them into science classrooms on both floors, and then renovating existing space to general instructional classrooms. One thing we found out about this when we looked a little bit closer was that we're doing quite a bit of things in terms of construction here that's adding to the cost, and we felt like we could scale that back to some degree. So we were adding an addition here for toilet rooms. We're adding pretty large stairs at both ends, leaving some space in the center, which is kind of larger than it needs to be, so we felt like we could tighten that up. We were affecting a lot of the structure in this building, in both of these pods, where we were having to really reconstruct the entire pods completely. So, and then some of the other toilet rooms, things like that. So the big piece here too was that we were building out over the girls' locker room. So that was all new construction, and you can see that in this next slide. You can see what's in yellow is actually new construction. What's in orange is renovated space. So we looked at a way to scale that back so we would not have to build that new space, which also would be problematic in terms of building aid for the toilet rooms especially. So we took a look at another option. We felt this option was quite strong in terms of the proportions of the science spaces. When we went back to the science faculty also and met with them, one of the concerns about option 1 was the actual proportions of the space and how this furniture would fit well inside and they'd still be able to teach at a very high level. So what we did is we also scaled back our work in both pods. We are still renovating in both pods, but we're focusing our science, the majority of our science classrooms into level 1 and level 2 of what we call the lower pod, if you will. There are 2 physics rooms that move into this upper pod, but the rest of this space is all general classrooms, totally reconstructed again because the layouts of the spaces that were there, the classrooms are undersized. We're making them all the right size to meet state ed regulations. We're getting rid of a lot of the concerns for security because of the spaces that are in the center and it's difficult to see down the hallways, so we're straightening those hallways out. We also are moving prep rooms from option 1, where option 1 had the prep rooms on the exterior wall. We now are moving those to the interior so that they could have direct access off the corridors as well. Toilet rooms, we have no reduction in toilet rooms. They're here in this pod on both floors. Then we've got larger toilet rooms along with faculty toilet rooms in that area of that pod. So with this type of approach, we're able to basically keep the classroom count essentially what was presented in option 1. I think there's a reduction of 1 classroom from option 1, but you get much better rooms, much better science rooms, and a much better layout. And again, we're saving about $1 million. Lou will go through the numbers here when we get to that point, just on from one layout to the next. We also were charged with looking at what it would take to renovate the science rooms in their current location. So we took a look at that as well. And basically what you see, and I'll go here a minute, what you see here is renovations here and renovations here. And we did make a mistake here. That really should not be colored orange because that area does not get renovated. You go back here and you see that we are renovating this lower pod, getting rid of, again, that the kind of cut off corners, making rooms the right size, again, for science rooms, again, to meet state ed regs. And then the rest of the sciences would be in their current location and in renovated space with the proper prep rooms and those kinds of things. The rest of the pods are not renovated to any great degree, so they basically stay as they are. Let's go back 1 second too. I didn't point out another efficiency with option 2 are these stairs. So we are actually able to keep the stairs in their current location, and we're not renovating or adding any new space there. So those are the 3 options. Option 1 you had seen before, a little different format, I believe. Option 2 is a progression from option 1. To basically, in our feeling and what we had reviewed with science staff and with the district leadership team, a much better layout and design for your academic program. And then option 3 was how we could really minimize the design completely, utilizing your existing space that you currently have for science, renovating that space, but not spending as much or putting as much effort into creating new science space in the pods. At Haviland, we want to show Haviland here as well, as Haviland, again, science is your top priority. So Haviland science would be completed as well. And not a tremendous amount of work here except for renovations. So we're taking over essentially what are existing rooms and renovating those 4 science rooms. So up in the front of the building, and a couple science rooms up there, and then these rooms. This is actually 2 rooms now with a room between them. We open that up, still 2 rooms, but they're larger, so again, they meet the state ed regs. But basically full renovations within those spaces at Haviland to make them more appropriate and more equivalent to, especially in living environment, to what you would have at the high school, so there's a natural transition from middle school to high school in terms of the space. Questions on, do I take questions on the design at this point? And otherwise we'll get into some of the numbers. Okay. Lou?
Good evening. Sorry. Uh-oh. Which one? No. Wrong way. Okay, so to make this easier to look at, we had the numbers were broken out into program and mechanical upgrades across the various schools. So when you look across the top, you'll see FDR option 1, 2, and 3. And those are the options, as Dan just went through, showing what we had originally presented, showing the option 2 with the $1 million worth of value and reconfiguration brought. And then option 3 showing just the renovation to just a small portion of the pods and then renovating the existing classrooms. when you look at the rest of the buildings, they're really mechanical upgrades. So, which one's the pointer? Oh, center. So when you look across here, you'll see that we did break out not just the FDR pods as far as the program renovations. What we also did was broke out FDR mechanical upgrades. We broke out the building into zones from A through G, and you'll see that I'm carrying $4.1 million worth of construction for FDR, and that would be to complete full upgrades from steam to hot water at FDR. At the Haviland Middle School, you'll see the science classroom upgrades, the $962,000. That's carried across all the options. At Haviland, we have the mechanical upgrades. This again would take all of Haviland and convert the whole building to hot water and bring it. That's $3.1 million that we're carrying across each one. And we also have North Park, Ralph R. Smith, Netherwood, and Violet. And you'll see in option 1, which at the previous board meeting, when we had presented the $34 million option, we had all of the elementary schools and the mechanical upgrades associated with each one as part of that option. The board charged us with coming back with an option that would be more affordable to the community, and therefore that's where we came to option 2 and option 3. Option 2 right now is showing a scope of work at FDR, mechanical upgrades at FDR, Haviland, the science classroom upgrades, the mechanical upgrades at Haviland, and mechanical upgrades at North Park. Option 3 is showing the same scope of work. And then you'll see the numbers as they have fallen down on each option with the full scope of work at FDR. Any questions on this summary sheet? So right now, do you want to talk to the recommendation?
Or okay. And I can help too if you want.
So we have met, I think, 2 or 3 times now with the DLT, and basically the DLT was charged with coming as close as they could to a recommendation to make to the board. Our last meeting, what was discussed was let's really talk about what the strongest and highest priorities are. So as Lou has already mentioned, a lot of this is a repeat, but where they landed was FDR High School in terms of the pod renovations for sciences. And Lou, all the mechanical work related to the pods is in here as well, right? Then the Haviland Middle School, so the science classroom renovations, Haviland Middle School, the mechanical renovations, and North Park, the mechanical renovations, to arrive at a subtotal of $13.2 million. It's strong planning that we add in design contingencies, construction contingencies, and escalation. I don't know if you've talked about each one of those before, what those mean, but we certainly can spend a little time on that if you'd like us to go through an explanation of that. So that brings you to a subtotal of $16.3 million. Incidental costs, State Education Department recognizes for a project like this anywhere from 20 to 25% on incidentals. Those are your project costs outside of bricks and mortar construction costs and these contingencies. So those are your professional fees, your special inspections during construction, any geotechnical work that has to get done, your bonding costs, finance costs, attorneys. Those are in addition to your actual construction cost. In this case, we carry 20%, and to arrive at a point of 19.5 or just shy of $19.6 million.
Just a quick question. The incidental costs are also including furniture in this case?
Also includes FF&E, furniture and equipment. Yes, thank you. Yep. Okay, so that is what is being presented tonight as a recommendation from the district leadership team for discussion, certainly. And I think at that point, so a couple other points we just wanted to bring up as well. Lou had mentioned that we had looked at areas A through G for mechanical upgrades. There was discussion, post-discussion, that the district leadership team certainly discussed, but not to this level of detail, the priorities. The sense is, and Elliot can jump in as well, but the sense is that if you're going to do any mechanical renovations and just pick one at the high school at FDR, it should be Area G. Because of the way the building currently works, you have 2 boilers. Area G is the gymnasium. 2 boilers that essentially feed into that gymnasium, Area G. And if you can make this upgrade, you can make the whole building and system much more efficient, running off of 1 boiler versus both. New lockers in the pods only. We are basically the current design. We have been told that you have adequate space with lockers in your current building, but we have made provisions for adding lockers back to the pods if necessary. And this shows what it would take to add those lockers back into the pods. And the curtain wall, that is basically ground roof glass that are in the connectors to the pods, and those are currently single glazed panels, so they're incredibly thermally inefficient. And there are some safety issues as well that could be improved there if we were to go back and upgrade that entire curtain wall system. So if you add those in, or if you add in the DLT recommendation along with Area G mechanically, you can see the number you get to, and then Area G plus the curtain walls, you get to a number of $20.3 million. We've also started to take a look at phasing, and it's actually very fresh right now, so we need to spend more time on this, but as you take spaces down for construction, we need to make sure that you have enough classrooms to obviously handle your ongoing operations. If you do not, then we're putting provisions in for a temporary classroom. We feel like right now, where things stand, and again, we need to look at this much more closely, we probably could get away with office space plus a single classroom having to move out while construction is being completed. But again, I don't want to alarm anybody with this. We need to spend a lot more time looking at this really before we solidify, and we have the time with you to put that together.
Can I ask a question about the lockers?
Mm-hmm.
And one earlier presentation that you did not give, but a former.
Sure.
Lockers were going to be in the main building, half size, so that you could get enough lockers in the main building and not have any pod lockers. Is that off the table, or is that more expensive?
It's not off the table. It certainly is something that can be considered, and I think is what has been discussed to reach the locker count right at this point. So that's something that certainly could be considered still as part of the work here. I don't know, Lou, whether it's been priced that way or not.
No.
So that is an option to do that instead of adding them back to the pods as well.
Okay.
This just shows the different mechanical zones, that's all. So I'll take you back, if you have, again, questions about design, take you back to the option 2 that's being recommended for further questions or discussions, if you have any. So.
Okay. Anybody? I mean, it's fair for the audience's sake, anyway, that we did spend an hour and a half talking about this prior to the open meeting, and the board did discuss changes to option 2, not necessarily agreed on changes, but discussed changes that didn't diminish it, but did add things back in. And we're currently, I think, working on how much that's going to cost, what would it mean to a taxpayer. So that's things we have to do. Myself, I recommended that all the hydronics and zones be done in the high school, and that kind of got us into discussion on how much that's going to cost. So I just think the public should know that although we're seeing this, it's not necessary, there could be some changes. We're still discussing it, and I think it was a very healthy discussion, and each of us has input, and we're not all going to get what we want, but it's still under consideration.
I think it's worth noting, or, you have to remember that some of us have been working with this for weeks and months, and,
Right.
and there's a lot that's gone on. The DLT has been incredibly involved in getting us to where we are today, and talking about, and I think that looking at the option 2 for the FDR pods seems to satisfy most of what everyone's looking for. I think it's important for everybody to realize that this district needs far more work than
What's
even
up there.
what's being proposed today.
Absolutely.
I mean, we have a building condition survey out there that shows, and I don't even know what
50.
Elliot, was it 50? What's the total dollars identified in the building condition
50.
survey?
The building condition survey had $33 million in construction work identified, and that was just quantification of what was on a 1 to 5 year expected useful life. So
Okay,
we can
which
expect
had nothing to do with science labs. Did
Correct,
it?
that's programmed. So this would
Right.
just be what the buildings themselves need.
Okay.
And in 2020, we're going to do another building condition survey, so you can expect that whatever we don't address now would be included on that, plus anything else that would be aging at the time.
So just, I want to point out that there's a lot of mechanical work that's being contemplated and priced for each of the buildings in the district. Just to throw a number out there, if you're really looking at, you're close to $35 million worth of work that's pretty easy to identify without even addressing all of what's in the building condition survey. And I think it's important for people to think about that and recognize it. And the district's not going away. I mean, we've got to make some serious investments, and it's really one of the battles that we're having with is what the rate of those investments are going to be. Elliot referenced the building condition survey that's done. It's mandated by us or by state education department for us to do every 5 years. And in theory, that's a way for us to identify work that needs to be done to maintain our buildings. Quite frankly, I don't think we necessarily need to do a building condition survey to identify the problems we have in our buildings. We know what they are.
Right.
They don't go away unless we do significant projects. So, just to recap, like I say, we spent 3.5 hours, or an hour and a half today going over and just understanding what's on the plans today and what the DLT has discussed. We're going to need to spend some more time. We're going to have to identify, what the priorities are, what schedule is. Since that meeting, I've got things already going through my head as to, I'm looking at Lou and saying, okay, Lou, if you start looking at these projects, and then Dan brought up some great discussions about what's the disturbance in the buildings and what happens to, we talk about a classroom space, an exterior classroom space. Maybe we need to be looking at a master plan that we may be talking about a 5-year construction project that maybe we want, is that the better way to look at this? That we should be approving a large project, but at least it's got those items in it that we really need to think about. Maybe we're doing an HVAC per summer in a building, so we're not doing disturbance through the school year. The pods, no doubt about it. The pods is a project. It's not a summer project. It's work that's going to take more than a school year. There's going to be that kind of disturbance there. But, I think we've got to get more numbers, and Linda's going to be the one that's going to be key, I think, in getting that, and just talking to our financial advisors about what it means to borrow $20 million, committing to $20 million or $25 million or $30 million or $35 million over the, well, no, but I'm saying that, it's not $35 million worth of work that you're going to do tomorrow.
Yeah.
Right. And realize that anything we're talking about right now, our students aren't going to use those improvements until the year 2021, probably. Unless something miraculous, happens. It takes 8 months to a year for SED to give us a green light to go ahead and do a project. So there's a significant delay from decision to putting in place. So, maybe we need to be thinking long and hard about, let's go through this process once and build a project that may take several summers,
Right.
but it may be the type of thing where we do this building this summer, the next summer we do this building, next summer we do this building, and we get them all up to speed, and, we're doing right for the district right from the beginning.
So we do have a couple of slides from the financial advisor based on the DLT recommendation, and I'm wondering if we should go over that. We have in board docs, the entire presentation is attached, but we do have the slides just showing the two scenarios.
And then from there, it would be helpful. It sounds like you want to see a couple of financial scenarios prior to landing on the scope of the project, because what I'm hearing is the scope of the project might wind up being bigger, but we'll have to look at some financial scenarios.
Yeah, I think.
Or, I mean, just before you start, Linda, with kind of with what you were saying, Perry, what this project right now illustrates is a portion of everything we would like to do, right? Obviously, and stuff. So it's important to point out that we're looking at a portion of everything we'd like to do versus getting a big project together of everything we would like to do. Is that, I mean...
I guess I'm sitting here and I'm having time to
wondering that.
digest it, just wondering what's better. Are we better to lay out the entire project and say, this is really what we need to be doing, and
This is when we're going to do it.
build a map as to how we
Yep.
get it done,
Yep.
and whether it's one capital project, whether it's one vote for multiple phases of a project with a larger single dollar amount, or is it a matter of of doing
Multiple
a
votes.
$20 million project this year, and realizing that before you even get that project done,
You
you
have
need
to
to
have
start
another one.
thinking about the next project.
Yeah,
You've got to be, we're probably going to be voting on the next project before this project's done, before it's completed, which is easier to understand.
Well, I think it's easier to compartmentalize things. I mean, I like your idea very well, but I think we're here now. And, and, I mean, I'm not sure that we want to kind of reinvent the wheel.
I don't think we're reinventing. I think that we're just repackaging. It's really just a matter of, we've got the numbers. I mean, we see what the project is. There's $35 million worth of work that's been identified. We're saying we don't want that big of a project. We don't think we want to go to the voters with a $35 million project. We want to, whatever the magic number is. Originally, we were thinking it was 14 or 15 million. Well, 14 or 15 million dollars doesn't get us anywhere near what we need.
Exactly.
So, you could approve, you could go out to vote for a $14 million project today, but by the time you get that built, you're going to have needed to probably do another $10 million worth of work. Get another $10 million approved.
At the same time, we know there's other projects that are coming up that are
Absolutely.
big.
This doesn't even
That-
include some of the other ones that we've,
And some of those, I think, are, like the roofs, are much more important than some of the pneumatics. If we look at the 5-year plan, the roofs are slated to, are due to be changed much sooner than some of these school pneumatics. So if we're going to look at that, then we have to look at the whole thing.
I agree. But I think we've got that's information that we've got pretty quickly. We can put that together pretty quickly.
And I guess this might also be a question for you, Linda, because I don't really understand how that works as far as us, kind of phasing the project out a little bit with what you're saying. I mean, suppose we go out for one vote, for like the whole kabang kind of a thing. Does that mean that we start with the financing of all of that right away and we kind of do that? Or does that mean that the
It goes-
financing gets trickled out,
Yeah.
just like the projects? How
Yeah.
does that work?
We get
When we
phased.
start construction, we usually take out bond anticipation notes, so that's short-term borrowing. And usually, by the time the project is closed and we go for the bond, we don't take the bond out for the full amount because we've already had a few years in where we paid off some of those bands. I don't know if that answers your question.
A little.
but
I guess I want to know
We do-
what that means to the taxpayers. I want to know what,
Right.
But that, I
You
mean,
don't
your
borrow it all at
scenario,
once.
what?
You don't borrow it all at once.
You don't borrow it all at once, so we
Right.
don't ask for the money all at once from our taxpayers.
No, you
right?
ask for all the money at once, but you don't borrow it. You borrow it
Yeah.
as you need it,
Well,
You-
the-
as the
you borrow
project
it-
goes.
so and correct me, but you say, I don't even put a number out there, but so if
Yeah.
it's a larger project, we get the approval from the voters to do the project. You don't borrow the entire value of the project initially. You do it as you go along, and particularly with SED, if you identify it as phasing, you can complete sections of the project, so you can start to get funding from SEDs. Yeah, so you're closing out. So let's say that if you're going to do the HVAC in this building, for instance, you could complete that phase, close it out, meaning all the contracts are complete, you submit all of your financial information to SED, that then starts the process of getting payments, your reimbursement from SED.
Right.
While you're still borrowing and doing, it's kind of like a rolling process, so you're doing, then you move on to the next project.
Right, so it's kind of like we just get the approval for it up front. And
Yes.
then that's,
I think what
guess,
you're asking is the full impact to the taxpayer on day one, or is that phased in
or
as
is
well?
it, or
Phased
does
in.
it trickle down and it trickles?
Yeah, it would phase in
over
over
15
years as
years.
the money is
Okay.
borrowed.
Well,
Yes, thank you.
The
That's
bonds.
what I was trying to get to. I was trying to figure out how this affected everybody's, wallet
So the way,
specifically.
So the way that we have typically budgeted for our debt service is we've tried to keep our debt payments every year were our local share. And what I mean by that, our local share is the total amount that we pay in debt every year, and we subtract out the building aid that we're getting back in that same year. So we typically pay over $4 million a year towards our debt, but with the aid that we get back, our local share is about $1.5 million. And on this, I know it's really hard to see, but on this slide, it's this line that runs along the top. That's our limit where we are right now. So earlier in the school year, I had asked our financial advisors to run the scenario for $14 million. I asked them how much would we have to use in capital reserve if we were to have a $14 million project. And at that time, they came back with the use of capital reserve of $1.98 million, but they also suggested that we use some of our debt service fund. We have a fund that's been accumulating based on when we're closing older projects where we don't use the full amount of authorization. We have to save that money to use only for debt, and we have over $4 million in that fund. So they suggested we use $1.3 million from that fund, and we use $1.98 from the capital reserve to have no impact on the taxpayer, meaning we wouldn't go above that line. So we wouldn't raise taxes for a project of $14 million. So the other day, during the district leadership team meeting, when we were coming up with the number, I know what we just saw was about $19.5 million, but in DLT, we came to a number of 19.7. So we wanted to see if we left the recommendation from the financial advisors at using 1.9 for the capital reserve and 1.3 from the debt service, how would our taxpayers be affected? And that's what this slide shows. In board docs, this is page 9 of the presentation. And in here, it's hard to see, but this box right here, they're indicating that over 3 years, so the total for 3 years, that's 2020, 2021, and 2022, we would have to come up with an additional $125,000. So it's in total for those 3 years, about $42,000 a year average. If we were to apply that to the tax levy and charge that back to the taxpayers, it would be no more than $4 or $5 a year for a home that's valued at $250,000. So if we were to go that route, we could, either raise the tax levy a little bit those years, or we could just use more of our debt service fund.
I was just
So
going to ask that,
we
is
could
it,
stay level.
it's possible to use more
Yeah.
from our debt.
Yeah.
Our debt.
And I know that our financial advisor would recommend that we do that, because we have been saying that we want to stay beneath this line right here, that we don't want to go over it.
Okay, so it's always possible. What were those numbers again? That we
For
had
the
in those
taxes?
funds? That we
That we have in the
that we have
funds?
available, and what
We
were they
actually have-
recommending?
We actually have 7 million available in our capital reserve fund.
Okay,
We were looking at using 1.98 million.
okay.
We have about 4.4 million in our debt service fund, and the recommendation here would be to use 1.3 million, and if we wanted to go with this scenario, but keep the debt service level below the line, we would take the additional $125,000 from the debt service fund.
Okay.
Just kind of a question.
Yeah.
Has the state ever, after approving it, held back aid? Say if the state comes into really financial difficulties in 3 or 4 years, have they ever held back?
I haven't experienced that. We've
Okay.
always gotten the aid. They have, while we're working on a project and submitting forms, they've asked for more information before they would approve the aid, but they've never held back anything that they've already approved.
And what's,
Have you ever seen it?
I'm sorry, I don't mean to be monopolizing, but what's
Yeah.
the downside to us taking more money from those accounts to put towards something like this? I mean, what's the downside to the district? I mean, does that put us in a tricky situation for the future financially?
If we use more of the capital reserve fund, we would just have that much less for our next project.
Okay, and what about the debt?
Or a roof?
Yeah, when we
Or-
had asked the voters to approve the capital reserve, we said it would be used, the first one, the 2 million, we said roof projects or anything identified in the building conditions survey. And then the 5 million, we said it would be for future capital projects or anything in the building conditions survey.
Okay, and then by taking more money from that debt,
And from the debt service
Service.
fund, we wouldn't want to use all of it at once, because we might bring our debt service down too low where we wouldn't be able to get it back up to a fitted project. But there isn't a downside to using it a little
Okay.
bit at a time. And actually, we should. So
Okay.
that's why the recommendation is to start using some of that.
thank you.
Some of that is to look at that as, that's rainy day money. That's,
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
again,
We
we've
don't
got
want to
aging
peak, but
buildings
what's
and, emergency comes up. It's
Okay.
where we can go to with the least impact on our
For the
operations.
debt service fund, we always have to use it to pay debt, but then we could fit in another project because we have lower debt for whatever year that we're using the money for.
Okay, thank you.
So I think before we move on to the Ralph R. Smith, did you have another slide?
Well, there was
Yeah,
one more.
sorry.
So with the same scenario, the 19.7 million, I asked the financial advisors just to let us know what we would have to do to stay below the debt service amount, but also have the same amount available in 2023 that we did with the $14 million project. So for that, and it's hard to see on here, but for that, they would recommend that we would use $4.5 million of the capital reserve and then change the debt service amount to 1.2 million. But in the other scenario, we have over $5 million remaining in capital reserve, and with this one, we would have about $2.5 million left. Isn't
Okay, so I think we have some more work to do. And
Okay, but that's great. So what we need from the board is, what exactly do you need to see at the next meeting? What is it you would like to explore?
Do you want me, I can be specific.
Sure?
I want to see exactly this presentation for option 2, but including all of the HVAC for FDR. And I want to see the financials on how that would affect with the financials and what that would mean.
So, okay, so we can,
Is that fair to say?
that's fair to, well, to answer that one right now, we actually know that in your presentation tonight, all of FDR at option 2 is
Yeah,
25 million. So you'd like to see the financials on that?
yes.
Okay. Anything else people would like to see? Because we need the specifics of what you want to see, otherwise we can't structure our next,
Can we also see the financial impact of doing it all?
The 34.
Yeah, option 2 of FDR, option 2 of FDR, but then all the other school, all the projects that were originally
Is
on
that
the
option,
table.
is that option 1?
No, option 1 had the knocking down of the
Yep.
pods and
Right.
rebuilding them. I'm saying option 2 of FDR, and
And the
then all of the
mechanicals.
elementary
Right.
schools
So
and
you
everything
just,
else.
yeah, you take that option 2 column and add the elementary schools back in.
Including all of FDR?
Yeah,
Yeah.
including
Also-
FDR and all the elementary schools. That would be
For the
doing everything.
HVAC.
So-
I would just add one caveat to that.
So
would be-
just make it easy, because we know that the difference between option 1 and option 2 FDR is $1 million. So it's the
Yeah.
difference between 34 and
Yeah,
33.
I know
Okay.
that, but what is the financial?
Yeah,
Financial.
no, I'm more for the listening audience.
And I guess that what I would add to that is looking at it as a phased project, because you're not, I mean, that's going to have an impact on the financials, because you're going to be pushing it out further for some of that later borrowing. And I would look to the construction manager perhaps to offer some insight from a logistics standpoint of how that could phase out over time.
Well, I'd also like to look at it also then, if it phases out, how long is it before we can do the next capital project? Because if roofs are then pushed back even more years before we do it, then that has to be looked at.
Yeah, the assumption of the DLT in approaching this project was the assumption of a 2023 capital project, which would mean a second vote, knowing that, again, you know, we're definitely going to need to be doing work on all these buildings. So we were looking at it as a phase-in, but a phase-in through voting structure. Propose a capital project now, another one for 2023 with our debt service falling off again, knowing that even when we, at the outset, looking at this stuff, we knew there was more. So our assumption all along was a second vote to get the 2023 work done.
Which I kind of like better.
I'd like to know how much could be funded in that 2023 capital project.
Is that doable? Is that something we can predict?
We can look at that. It wouldn't be exactly accurate because we don't know what our building aid ratio will be then. I'm not really sure if we would know if.
There's a lot of variables in that.
Yeah. I think
so.
really the biggest one is we can get something based
Yes.
on current assumptions.
Yeah, I mean, that far out, we're just talking about estimates, no
Yeah.
matter what you're talking
Yeah.
about. The other question is, if we combined the current capital project funding with the funding available from 2023, how could that be structured financially to even out the tax burden?
So like if we had one vote and then phased it in so that we wouldn't have another vote for 2023, but just work in this project to
That's right.
Okay.
Okay, any other things, Melinda?
Just kind of curious, does the state aid stay at 61% if we're phasing it like that?
Since, so just to give you an example, when I started working here 6 years ago, our billing aid ratio was 58.3%.
Right.
And now we're up to 61.9. We do have the projected amount for next year for 18-19, and it goes up to 64%, but that's not final yet. So the numbers, when we get the information from our financial advisor, they're using the 61.9%. But yeah, it's the projected amount for next year is 64.7.
Linda, if we did that, would the vote that the public votes on identify the start dates for the individual phases? Or would they just be authorizing the total amount? Or
I'm
can
not
it be structured that way?
I'm not sure about that. Would you know, Dan?
Yeah.
Can you
Would-
come
do
up
we
to the
have to do
podium,
it?
Dan?
Yeah.
Please, thank you.
We would try to approximate the start dates of the other phases, so that whole plan was built out, and the public would see that when they voted. Make sense?
Does that?
Yeah.
Yeah, do we have to, are we required to show it that way?
No, you're not required to. I mean, it has some flexibility, but we think it's probably, good practice
Yeah.
that you would take that approach, so you have some, so that.
Yeah, it gives us some
They
checks and
know.
balances along
Yeah.
the length of a long project to see if we suddenly
Right.
took a windfall in a good shape or took a hit in a bad shape. We'd see it.
Right.
I think if the numbers are there and they don't match up, we'd be questioning it immediately, whereas if we're going 10 years to find out at the end of the 10 years, oops. Don't like oops.
Okay.
Okay, so at our next meeting, we'll present financial options with some phasing in possibilities from Lou, no new architectural designs. And is that doable, Linda, while you're preparing the normal budget yet?
Well, I work on I'll be doing the normal budget, and Jason will be helping with this.
Okay, you
Our
sure
financial advisor.
You're good, so for
Yeah.
the 25th, we'll?
Yep.
Great.
Great. Okay.
Thank you. Safe travels.
Thank you, Dan. And that brings us to our normal stuff. Melissa, you're up.
Good evening, everyone. Us short people need the mic a little lower. Welcome to Ralph R. Smith, and we're really pleased to have you here tonight. I encourage everyone to take a look at our artwork in the back of the cafeteria. Our students have worked hard on that, and yeah, we're excited to have you here again this year. So, see if I can work this. So at Ralph R. Smith, we, a few years ago, developed our mission and vision statements. We've gone over these in the past, so I'm not going to read them to you. Our motto is "We are all owls, outstanding, wonderful learners." Our students hear that every day on the announcements, and it's just a way to encourage a growth mindset. You have some papers in front of you. One of them is a growth mindset poster, and we've spent some time really thinking about that this year and encouraging positive thinking. And on the back of that sheet is just some encouraging words about the power of yet. I may not understand this yet, but I will. And those are important words for our kids to hear and say to themselves when things get challenging. So we have a lot to be proud of here at Ralph R. Smith. We have done a lot of really nice programs for students over the past few years. One of the new things that we have focused on is inviting some of our foster grandparents into our building. The Foster Grandparent Program is a program where grandparents in the community get to come in and volunteer, and they get paid to do so. And it's just a really nice experience for our kids. So we have 4 foster grandparents this year that some of them come every day, some of them come 3 times a week. And they are tasked with working with some of our K-2 students using a program called Great Leaps. It's a reading intervention program. And you'll see them at work in some of our pictures here on the slide today. But Mr. and Mrs. Chu, Mrs. Muggenberg, and Mrs. Bongiovanni come and help our students. And they're just another positive adult in our children's lives. So, and they're working on literacy, which is awesome. We also are in our 2nd year of the One School, One Book program. And this is a program that is funded through our Title I parent involvement money, as we are a Title I school, which means that over 50% of our students are receiving free or reduced lunch. So we use some of that funding to get literature in the hands of students and families. So this year, we're focusing on a series of books called El Rey Jakes, and I have them here. If anyone wants to look at them, they can. But it's a fun little book that families will be reading together. We start actually on Tuesday. So the books are coming home this weekend so that families can read the first chapter together over the weekend. And we do trivia contests and fun activities here in school based on the books. So we're looking forward to that. Some of the other things you've heard about before, I'm not going to go into great detail. We continue with our Olveus Bully Prevention Program, which is in its 3rd or 4th year now. We're really focusing on bus behavior this year. Right before vacation, we had bus meetings. We invited bus drivers to be a part of those meetings. We had some bus drivers that were able to come in, and students set goals by bus, what they wanted to work on to improve their school bus ride to and from school. So that was a nice community event as well. We also used some of our title money to have Greg Tang Jr. come in for a math PD with staff, but also a family game night with families, and we had a nice turnout. We also had a number talks PD that was arranged with myself and Kim Neisel. We had a consultant come in to teach us about how to support our students as they're talking about math in the classroom. And one of our big focuses this year is on independent reading and conferring, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later. So just some numbers to keep in mind before we get to data. Our enrollment has decreased slightly over the past couple of years. We're about down 15 students or so. And our opt-out rates have remained about the same. We're roughly at about 35%. However, last year we had a larger number of opt-outs for the science test in 4th grade. We had a 43% opt-out rate. Our students with disabilities in our building, as you know, we house the special class program, which is the 12-on-1 settings. And we have a 25% of our population is students with disabilities, and 52% of our population is economically disadvantaged students. In looking at our data, we all were very shocked by our data when it came back over the summer. We felt like we were making nice gains, and we were really disappointed when we saw the results for our ELA math scores. So one of the things that we have been working on is a data inquiry cycle with our faculty and staff, but also with myself and district administrators. Myself, Kim Neisel, Jen Kreiser, Amy, and Heather Dennis have been participating in a data inquiry PD and conference through Pace University, and we have been really doing a deep data dive and trying to understand why we're persistently not making progress. And you know, we're starting to uncover those layers of the onion. You know, it's a really complex thing to look at. But we all know that the tests that the students take are, whether it's reading, math, or science, they're all reading tests. They all students have to be able to read and understand what they're reading, and oftentimes the state tests are written above the grade level benchmarks. So, you know, we're really looking at that and trying to figure out what we need to do to improve our instructional practices, and we're enjoying that work and really thinking about what's happening, what we're doing well, so we can leverage that, but also what we need to think about doing differently. Some of the things that we have found is that about 63% of our opt-outs were reading above benchmark. So that's a significant amount of our students who are reading above benchmark who aren't taking the test. So that's one of the things that we have uncovered. So math data is next, and you know, it's very similar in nature. And our science data, and we believe that the reason we have some decrease in the science data is the higher percentage of opt-outs. Our next steps based on the data, as I mentioned, we're involved in data inquiry, not only as administrators, but as every faculty meeting, we're talking about data and really trying to understand what's happening and next steps moving forward. And that has led us to really focus on improving the time students are spending in independent reading and our conferences with students as they read independently so that we can push their thinking and support them as they're doing that work. So that is one of our building focuses this year. And Generation Ready, we have a consultant, Linda Weinbaum, who's been working in our building for several years, and she is doing direct push-in support in classrooms. And I can say that every time I walk into a classroom, I'm seeing evidence of the work that Linda is doing. The Number Talks PD, I mentioned already, we've been doing some great work with Number Talks and supporting math thinking. And we're also focusing on science and technology and engineering and math, STEM. We're having our science fair coming up soon, and we're having some STEM challenges where classrooms are competing against each other, and the results will be shared at our science fair. As you know, we are a local assistance plan school. That means we aren't meeting adequate yearly progress according to the state. However, I would say that our staff, they're working incredibly hard, and they are really working tirelessly to meet the needs of our students and focus on growth. Some of the goals that we've set for our LAP are completing the data inquiry process, focusing on independent reading and conferring. We're doing a building-wide book study this year on conferring, and improving our progress monitoring in math. Kim Neisel and I have been working on introducing some nice progress monitoring tools through Skills Navigator. That's a program that's directly linked to our MAPS assessments that our students take twice a year and sometimes 3 times a year if they're in AIS. So we are working towards meeting those goals. Our building level team is very active. We have a strong team in place, and this year our goals are focused on supporting the critical thinking work that the DLT has taken on. And one of our goals is to take the critical thinking rubrics that tend to be written for adults and put them in kid-friendly I can language that our children can really grasp and understand. So we're well underway with that. And we're also supporting our independent reading goals through targeting our 2nd and 3rd graders and getting them hooked on reading a book series. We all know as adults, once you find that author or series, you love it and you look for it. So we want our kids to find that connection with a book. So that's one of our goals that we are working on right now. Our parent and community involvement, you'll see the print is very small because we do have an active community. Our PTA is incredibly active. We have at least one evening event a month, and we're always changing things up. So this year we've added new to our calendar an ice cream social, which is happening next week, a family fun run in June, and a paint party where families will be painting together. So those are just some of the new events that are coming up. We also continue to do our play. This year we'll be doing Snow White, which will be wonderful. And we always end our year with a student expo where we invite families to come in and celebrate the learning that our kids have done throughout the year. And the turnout for that event is incredible. And it's just a nice celebration of all the hard work that our kids have done. So we are a busy place at Ralph R. Smith. We're working hard. As I said, the data isn't what we really want, but it's teaching us a lot. So we're learning a lot about next steps, and we're still trying to uncover what's really happening. And I also left on your table our Owl Star and Bucket Filler Awards. Quarterly, we give out awards, so please take a look at that and the cute faces of all the proud students who have earned the awards that their teachers have nominated them for. So do you have any questions for me?
In the the state testing results that you showed, what percentage of the students in those classes opted out?
It depends on the grade level, but we are at about a 35% opt-out rate across all 3 grade levels. So I can get you the specific numbers, but I don't have them right in front of me right now.
Do you identify that, or do you know who the students are that opted out?
Yes.
Do you have any alternative measurements for the performance in the classroom?
We do. As I said, we do MAPS assessments. We do F&Ps, which is a reading assessment. And teachers do running records on an ongoing basis to check reading improvement and growth over time. And as I mentioned, we're using Skills Navigator, which is tied directly to the MAPS assessments as a progress monitoring tool, especially in math.
So what are the alternative progress measurements show?
Well, this is where we're a little confused because our students are, I'll give you an example. At 5th grade last year, about 75% of our students ended the year on benchmark for reading. And yet they're not being successful on the state test. And one of the things that we know to be true is that the reading passages on the state test are written above benchmark. So even if a student is reading on benchmark, it can be very difficult for them to be successful on the state test. And that's just one factor. That's one of the things that we are looking at. But it's frustrating.
So one conclusion that you could reasonably reach, given what you've just told me, is that the state assessment is broken, based on the fact that it doesn't match the assessments, the other assessments that we've given, based on the fact that you said that the reading assignments are not, in the state assessment, are not at the same level as the grade. So what are the alternative theories? If the state assessment isn't broken, what does it mean? Or what's the other explanations?
I don't have a clear and definitive answer for that. What I can say is that, state assessments are one measurement that we look at, but our students are measured in many different ways, and success is measured in many different ways. And, as far as state tests go, they are, as we're being told, they are changing them, and they are working on improving the measurements so that they are more realistic and more on grade level. So that's something that, the state tests change every year, and it's trying to hit a moving target. So it's very difficult to say.
So I agree with you that the student progress can be measured in multiple different ways. And I suppose I don't fully understand why you only showed us the state test results when there are a lot of different ways to look at it. And given the opt-out rate, the numbers you showed us, I consider almost completely unrealistic. That they really don't give us, there's such a large margin of error because of the opt-outs that I don't think that we or the public should draw any conclusions based on those numbers.
And if the board wants us to present different data, we would be happy to discuss that. And, we've always presented state data because it is what we're measured against, and it is part of our LAP and how we're identified as a LAP school. So I do think it's important to understand that and why that designation is there. But if you want different data, I can certainly provide that.
No, that's a fair point. You present state information because that's how we got your school is identified as something that needs extra attention. So that's completely fair, but I would be interested in seeing something accurate.
Sure.
It would be nice if the administrators got together and then come up with a plan for each school to present to us each year, and what measurements that we're going to use. So it would be a good idea if all the elementary administrators got together, and if we're showing state tests and show maps, especially because if one has to show, then we should see it across the board. But I am curious that you said that the students here are reading a benchmark. Is Deanna's here, are the other teachers seeing the same thing in relation to the state test?
In other buildings, you
Yes.
mean? Or?
I know
can't
it's something.
speak to
I know
that.
you can't
Yeah.
speak to that, but I would be very curious. If we're saying this, then the other schools are probably seeing the same thing.
Okay. Any other questions?
I feel like I need to jump in at this point because in 2 weeks, I'm doing the assessment report for the district. And although it's prepared, it's completed, I certainly can add things if there's something you're interested in, since I have the data for the district and I want to make sure it's what you're looking for. So.
Okay. Could
You
board
can share
members
with
like
me later.
email
I just
you,
wanna-
and if we have some suggestions, we can just email you?
Yeah, then I can, at
Okay.
least
So that-
share it with you.
All right.
And there's time in the next, 2 weeks, I can get it to you in the next few days so that you'll have it in
Okay.
time.
And I think we would be eager to share different data as well.
Okay. Thank you, Melissa.
Thank you.
Rick? Are we spending too much on presentation software that you have all these fancy slides?
I try to set a high standard for myself.
High standard, oh, okay, all right.
Actually, if you're really savvy, you might notice that the arrow is flipped this year. We redesigned the logo because we didn't like that it was going the other way. So just if you're really watching, the Hyde Park Tech Services logo has flipped.
So pointed away from the board, so that's good.
But there you go, see? Good evening, everybody. I'm Rick Ward, Director of Technology, and this is my once of 2 times per year giving the tech update. Okay. That's really tiny. So what have we done? As you know, we have 3 main avenues of funding. The Smart Bond, which is a one-time gift from the state of $2.6 million. Of that, we have spent, we have about $900,000 left from what we've spent or have encumbered, ready to spend. With that, we purchased 204 75 interactive screens. Those are up thanks to an incredible group of gentlemen through facilities and operations. Elliot Sheldon and Elliot Garcia, obviously, but then the guys who actually did the heavy lifting, literally. Gordon Coughlin, Tim Backus, Kyle Rose, Darren Fisher, Bob Fogg, Scott Roitze, William Worley, and Brian Romer. These men went through the district. The TVs we had at Haviland, we took down. We moved those to smaller classrooms throughout the district. Then they put these 75-inch screens up, and in every instructional place, except a few places we're having some wall issues, but every instructional space throughout the district has an interactive screen now for teachers to use with kids, and that was because of the Smart Bond funding. We also purchased 2,880 Chromebooks for our one-to-one initiatives at the middle school and high school. Funny story there. We bought them Dell, which is a great company, a phenomenal company. They always back the stuff. Everything we have in the district is pretty much Dell. Of those 2,880 Chromebooks, 2,700 had defective screens. So after 75 community volunteers spent 180 hours unboxing almost 3,000 Chromebooks, very quickly we found out that they had jumpy touch. That's where the screen just starts doing its own thing. Dell has been responsive. What's going to be happening is somewhere in February, we hope that they get the parts, they will come, they will replace the screens on every single machine, which is great news. That means I don't have to unbox anymore. Additionally, they were acknowledged their mess they created for us, and they gave us a $20,000 credit as well. So it's been challenging, to say the least, for our students as they've been experiencing these issues. We've been fixing them as best we can as they happen, but 2,700 weren't effective. So I'm still seeing bright horizons down the road. And then additionally, with that Smart Bond funding, we did some upgrading to our network wiring at Howland and North Park. In those two buildings, you would walk in the room and there'd be one internet cable. That one internet cable was supplying the telephone, the desktop computer, and any other pluggable devices. We added a second and sometimes a third drop to the room. And eyes towards the future, one is up high, so possibly IP clocks and PA systems. Another port is on the far side of the room, so there's flexibility in room arrangement. E-rate funding is money we receive through the telecommunication companies, and Hyde Park we get a decent chunk of money. It varies year to year depending on the companies and the amounts they agree to give us. We're using that as well for networking improvements. Some of you may know, some of you intimately because you helped wire the buildings, that our networking closets are literally closets or mop rooms and things like that. They're not air-conditioned spaces and not really good for networking equipment. We've actually purchased closets, little cabinets that are actually air-conditioned to increase the longevity of our networking equipment. So that stuff is coming in and being installed by my incredible staff. And then our district funds, we have been able to do quite a bit with what we have. We're taking the equipment we have and trying to prolong it as long as we can. A lot of our desktops have been out there for 6-7 years, which is a long time. So we're slowly rotating out the oldest equipment with some newer stuff that's Windows 10. We completely updated our Mac lab. That Mac lab was 7, 8, 9-year-old machines. It really was on its last leg, and it's the last vestige of Macintosh in the district as far as desktops. Ted Frazek runs a great program down there, so with his guidance, with Eric Shaw and a whole bunch of other people, we redid that lab just right before the break. So those 30 machines, even though they're still old, we've taken the best and we're slowly farming those back out to other places around the district. So we're really trying to do the best we can with the equipment that we have and get the most out of it that we can. Library computers, we also redid 2 of the labs up at the high school as well. We've been doing software purchasing. We're looking closely at that with our BOCES funding. We purchase software through there as well as district funds. I now actually have a process in place where when someone wants software, we make sure it's SIPA and COPPA compliant. That means it has to follow certain guidelines from the federal government for library and personally identifiable information of kids. Transition to the new website. As you know, Blackboard bought out the old website company. We didn't have a choice. We had to go to this new thing. It's had its rocky bumps as website transitions will, but the website is coming along. We've got a great bunch of digital media coordinators throughout the district working really hard to make the site user-friendly and useful. And then improving our district auditoriums. Last year we were able to kind of fix the auditorium at Netherwood with a decent projection system. We finished North Park about a month ago with a really nice system, new audio system, new projection system, new screen. My next one to tackle is this auditorium as well as the FDR auditorium. They're projects that are long overdue. Our auditoriums haven't been user-friendly. The sound system has been suspect at best and difficult to use on a good day. So really the systems are designed by a professional company, and they're all about someone can walk in and hit buttons and know exactly what they need to do, and it works beautifully. So technology integration support. With all the technology we've been bringing in, and it's quite a bit, especially because of the Smart Bond, just putting stuff out there isn't helpful. So through BOCES, we're able to hire 2 part-time people. Julianne Ross-Kleiman and Michelle Palmieri are our 2 tech integrators. They're both here 3 days a week. And their job is actually just to provide technical support to teachers. They're here to teach the teachers. And it takes on a couple different iterations. They meet one-on-one with teachers, and they'll do it either co-teaching with them, model teaching with them, or watching the teacher teach and providing feedback, or even just conferencing with teachers. They also do small groups and workshops before and after school. They have been extremely busy. From September to December, they did 250 individual and small group workshops. And they covered a whole range of topics. So I know one of the interests in this presentation is, how's the technology being used? That's where it starts. Is I can put a TV in someone's room, but it will sit there dark unless they know how to turn it on, how to really effectively use it. Those 2 ladies have done a phenomenal job getting people to use the technology in really neat and creative ways. Additionally, 30 building professional development sessions. We have a teacher training day tomorrow. And in the afternoon, Julianne is running traditional workshop at the high school on a number of different things like There's a coding piece with something called, it's not owls, it's named after a bird. But the teachers are going to be actually coding the bird to do different things. They're doing things on the new ViewSonic boards. At the middle school, it's something called EdCamp, where the teachers are putting the topics out there, and then they're going to the workshops where they want to learn more, and it's about them teaching each other. So a lot of great stuff is happening just around tomorrow. Another great thing they did for us was our digital citizenship. When this one-to-one initiative started last year at Haviland, the teachers were taking a significant amount of classroom time to teach the citizenship lessons. Michelle, took the bull by the horns and made it online, and it's self-paced learning. So the kid goes through, learns the material, and then takes a quiz. If they had a question wrong, it takes them back to the material, and then they take the quiz again. If they pass, they move on. And it's one of the requirements to get a Chromebook. So thanks to Michelle, she's done a phenomenal job with that. It actually sped up the process significantly. Technical services, we added 2 technicians because of just the way things work. They didn't actually start until mid-October. And Doug Jones and Frank Biasini are both incredible gentlemen. We warned them it was going to be tedious and mundane working on Chromebooks, and they're like, bring it on. It is tedious and mundane, and they're doing a phenomenal job. And they show up every day for work, and they've just been a nice addition to the team. Additionally, we have a 0.5 TA this year at Haviland dedicated to just the management of Chromebooks, and there is quite a bit. It almost seems nonstop at times. And then we also, Therese McKenna in particular, schedules monthly PD sessions for a building. She's done that for years and does a phenomenal job teaching people things like MAPS testing. So how is the equipment being used to enhance teaching? I asked the teachers these questions. From the responses, we created the word cloud, and you can see the words that pop up. Obviously, Google is a big word. Interactive screen is a big term because it's now the focal point of almost every classroom in the district. And when you walk around, you will see key statements up there. And it's not just, unfortunately, it's not just a glorified chalkboard. That would be the biggest waste of your money if it was just another chalkboard. What I saw in a lesson yesterday, high school Maggie Schimmelfennig, she's using it as a whiteboard, but then she saved those notes and she shares them out with the kids. So her teaching notes become the kids' notes. And in other places I've seen it where those notes actually become collaborative and the kids are working on it with the teacher at the same time. In another high school classroom, I showed 2 teachers today casting, where all they do is they share their screen with their students and they can allow Mr. Zagorski to show his screen up on the wall. What's that mean? You've done a great job writing something, let's share it with the class. Without you ever leaving your seat, your writing can show up on the board, and then the kids can go up and annotate it collaboratively. So there's some really very, very cool stuff. There was also a day of code at the middle school that Kim Neisel and Eric Shaw put together with IBM engineers. That was great. We did an evening of code here with David Chakowski, working with all the elementary families that were willing to come in, and it had a nice crowd for that as well. So how is all this technology being used? It's being used constantly. The data on just the number of Google documents and emails and all the other good stuff and all the other things that happen with technology that enhance learning, in the end, I think the proof will be in the pudding. If we can see our scores rise, if we can see our student engagement rise, that's the longer term. For this short, narrow view of just a few months with it being in place at FDR, there's good stuff happening. I'm curious to see what will be the effect on student learning over a longer span of time. So, Chromebook lessons, there have been lessons. If you remember about this time last year, I came and I told you we had about 25 cracked screens. This year at the same time we're at 10. Why? Because all the Chromebooks we purchased for the one-to-one have Gorilla Glass. Their touch screen, it wasn't about the touch screen, it was about the thickness of the glass. They're not breaking as much. Additionally, we put all of the Chromebooks into hard shell cases. Why? So they don't get damaged as much. So we're seeing some returns on those investments. There's a piece about the broken Chromebooks, hard shell cases, and a streamlined enrollment process. Last year it took a couple weeks to get kids their Chromebooks. I think even next year we're going to speed it up even faster. Just because we don't want them to be sitting on a shelf somewhere. We want to get these in kids' hands and then being used. So the 3-step process is they have to go through the digital citizenship curriculum and pass the test. They have to have a one-to-one handbook signed off by the parents and the acceptable use policy as well. And I will say that the library staff at Haviland and FDR, Tracy Ainsley, Nancy Halton, Danielle Freed, Nikita Negersmith, and Deb Beers, and Jean Cody as well at the middle school. They have been managing the Chromebooks in just amazing ways. And if you want to think about 1,200 kids coming at you saying, give me my Chromebook, it's a daunting task, and they're really doing it well, let alone the day-to-day management of, I broke my Chromebook, can I have a loaner, and back and forth. So it's really an amazing group of people that are making all this come together and happen. So where are we hoping to get to? Again, hopefully keep our staff going. We're managing a great number of Chromebooks. I know when people go, 6,000, why 6,000 Chromebooks? It's 1-to-1 at the middle school and high school, and then there are carts at the elementary school, and in addition to that, you need spares for when things go down. We actually have 4 spare Chromebooks. They're the really old Asus Chromebooks from 4 or 5 years ago. We have 4 or 5 Asus Chromebooks in every classroom at the middle school and high school for when kids forget or when Chromebooks get damaged.
At least 4 years.
So it's a number of Chromebooks. There's a reason for it. The Go Guardian piece is a safety net for our kids.
All I need.
We always forewarn parents, and every session we've ever done, there is no 100% safety net. There's no way we can keep your kids completely safe. That's the education piece, that's the eyes on. But Go Guardian filters a lot for us and gives us a lot of great reports. One of the reports we've actually just started using quite a bit, it's a self-harm report. So when kids are Googling things like, how do I commit suicide? If they do that a couple times, or they're looking at sites that talk about that, it sends me a note. I evaluate that, and then I share it with the building principal, and they choose to act upon it. And I will say there have been a couple challenging conversations, and I think a few that have been very helpful. So the tools that we have, it's a big, scary world out there, and we're trying to do everything we can to keep our kids safe with the tools that we have. 2,000 desktops and laptops. We're seeing a number of desktops decrease because of the hands-on technology we have. So you're going to see that number of desktops decrease over time. It will never completely disappear. Interactive flat panels, networking enhancements, the updated website. End of year goals, we have a number of things we want to accomplish. We have a number of things that we have done, but I'd like to continue working on the auditoriums. There's another slide about that in a second. We want to keep working on integrating our technology into the instruction in really effective and good ways. A couple big projects are up there I'll talk about in a minute. We're working on upgrading our secretarial machines across the district and bringing those up to speed. One of the problems that I've noticed since coming on board is just the old dysfunctional hardware. There's a place called the Violet Avenue basement that is sort of a catch-all place. I am on this ridiculous, crazy goal, which my 19-year-old son who's home from college really dislikes, because I've grabbed him and dragged him into it. We are slowly cleaning out that old technology that is literally from 1980, 1990, maybe the early 2000s. It's old, derelict stuff. We've actually found a company that will possibly pay us some money instead of just donating it to recyclers. So we're working with them for the first time. We'll see what we get. So as in board agendas, you're going to see more stuff about discarding old technology. If you have any questions about it, you're concerned about it, ask me, but I guarantee you, it is not useful stuff. My 19-year-old son who likes to scavenge parts looks at it and goes, I don't want that. Good. And the SmartBound Round 2, in a moment, I'm going to talk about that as well. So, major projects. The top right one is probably the most critical. Right now, on the side of this building, there is a little antenna, and it connects with another antenna wirelessly over in the bus garage. That runs not only the computers of the bus garage, but also the phone system. That wireless bridge is over 6 years old, I believe, and according to Cisco, the provider, it is end of life, which means they will no longer support it. And it is getting flaky. We could replace that wireless bridge. It's a couple, like $10,000, or we received a quote. We actually have a quote for running wire, fiber, over to the transportation garage and then back to the trailer as well, the break trailer, so that George can use that space for training. That's going to run us about $19,000. I knew that was coming, so I put that into my budget for this school year, so those are district funds I anticipated. I'm also using a little bit of E-rate money to do that work because it's E-rateable. On the bottom, video camera recording. As you know, we have video cameras covering the interior and exterior of our middle school and high school and our elementary schools as well. We added a number of cameras, and as the cameras get newer and newer, they get better and better, and the resolution gets better and better, it chews up your memory. And what we're seeing is we're starting to lose recording time. And we'd like to have 30 to 60 days of recording time. We're we're maintaining that, but what we know is as we add more cameras, we're going to lose more and more recording time. We spoke with our consultants, and they designed a system for us, and it's a $190,000 server that is expandable over time. Our current system is not expandable. So that means for that price tag, which I would like to put into my smart bond round 2 under security and surveillance equipment, we'll have the basic setup, the basic rack, and then over time we just add more memory modules as our cameras expand. And then the third piece is the FDR Auditorium. We met with a great committee of parents, students, faculty members, interested community members, and we talked about the sound system and the presentation system at the auditorium. I don't want to talk lights because that's a whole other world in the theater world. But for sound and presentation system, the FDR Auditorium, which is a showcase for the district. You even mentioned the Ralph R. Smith concert, the North Park concert's there, the plays are there. It's not a good setup. Working with Elliott, we've designed a redesign of the actual projection booth so we can secure the equipment so the light board and the soundboard aren't sitting out in the open. The total price tag of $42,000 is incredible new sound system, a great projector, really what that place needs to be really a usable, functional facility. And we can look at perhaps not renting people to run our shows, we could do them ourselves. So it's just the kind of investment that you'd like to see. This is something that we could actually complete, that we hope to complete by mid-March in time for the spring play. So this is all very doable stuff. And again, that is stuff that I had budgeted for in the school budget and a little bit of smart bond as well. So it's not a cost that's entirely borne by the district. It's also the smart bond funding. Other tech news, that's my incredible staff. And behind me is one of my staff members. We call him our tech volunteer, Roger Gill. I can't speak enough about the people that are pictured up there. They are an incredible group of people that work amazing hours and amazing, just a great work ethic, and they do a ton. Since the start of the school year, July through December, they processed over 2,650 tickets. It's grown more since then. Each ticket can represent 10 minutes of work up to 4 days worth of work. So it's an amazing amount of stuff they have done. The work continues. They're not slowing down. We're supporting 1,000 staff, close to 4,000 students, lots of equipment. So an amazing group of people that I'm pleased to work with. And again, Roger, we couldn't do it without him. The man's a machine. He's incredible. And that is it. Any questions that I can answer for you?
Any question?
I have a question about, the Smart School Bonds Act gave a lot of resources for a lot of equipment, all of which has a finite life expectancy.
Yes.
What's going to happen then?
It's a great question because it's one that has concerned me, because what I know is as those 3,000 Chromebooks die, in a lifespan of, the ACEs have been going for almost 5 years, which is amazing, but a good chunk of those have died. I know a Chromebook I can reliably count on for 3, maybe 4 years. A desktop, well, we push them to 5, 6, really 4 to 5 years would be good. In my budgeting, I've developed a 5-year plan, and what I've tried to do is look at our wireless access points, which will be coming to end of life at some point. I've looked at our network switches, our routers, and all those things, and our desktops, and our Chromebook, and I've tried to parse it out so it's a very steady price across the years. My goal is that I'm replacing not 3,000 Chromebooks in a year, but 1/5 of our fleet. Our desktops, 1/5 of our fleet. So I'm trying to at least spread it out. The reality is this technology does cost money, and technology's not a $100,000 a year budget. If you want to stay on top of it, it's like the bus fleet. We have a great cycle, and I was around when this started. We have a great cycle of replacing a certain number of buses every year so we don't get caught up in these ancient machines that we're spending more on repairing. It's the same thing with technology. Yeah, I can keep some of these desktops going for 8, 9 years, but we're going to pay for it because it's just you're going to end up paying more in productivity in some ways. So I'm trying to work my own budgeting so that we're at least stable in cost.
So are you anticipating that there's going to be a need to increase your line item budget?
In talking with Greer and Linda, they saw my proposals for this coming year. I see right now, if I can keep my equipment budget about where it is, I think we'll be okay. To be honest, though, I'm held up right now because Cisco's not gotten back to me with our full amount of networking equipment, and some of that stuff is very expensive, so I'm a little hesitant to say it's never going to increase, because I don't have some of the numbers I need at this point. I'm waiting for them to get back to me, unfortunately.
Okay. And you also had an item in there for video storage.
Yes.
That you're looking at about $190,000, I believe. And I think you said that you have currently a 30 to 60-day storage
That is
capacity?
our goal.
Oh, that's your goal?
That is our goal. I would, I'd rather not say what we're actually recording right now.
Okay.
Because, security cameras are a deterrent,
Yep.
right? We have tried to max out the available time that we have. We have around 2 weeks. We'd
Okay.
like more.
Mm-hmm.
Just for, research purposes.
I was going to say, have you found many times when you need greater than a couple weeks?
Sometimes we find out things a long time after they occur, because I can tell you a story from Netherwood, but you don't always find out the next day. Sometimes you find out 4 or 5 days down the road. So you want at least 2 weeks. I'm more comfortable with 30 days. That would be my goal.
Okay.
Okay.
Any other questions?
In the meantime, for the video storage, is there a way to prioritize cameras so that?
We have done that. We've also decreased the resolution on some of the cameras. Some of the ones where we're not looking for license plates, for instance. Just to give us motion, we've decreased resolution on some cameras. We're not recording some cameras that maybe are not as critical a place as other cameras. So that's what I meant about maximizing our time. Yes, we have done that. And
so you've already worked around the edges to
we've tried to maximize
optimize,
where we
but-
can to get the most time that we can from what we have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else? Thanks, Rick.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks.
At this time, may I have a motion to enter public participation, please?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion on that? All in favor? Opposed? Thank you. If anybody would like to address the board, please step up to the mic and we'd be happy to hear you.
Hi. I'm calling, or I came here tonight to just,
Excuse me, could you just give your name?
Jessica Patterson.
Oh, thank you.
Here to discuss the issues that have been occurring at Haviland Middle School regarding physical assaults, nonstop bullying. I know the district has an anti-bullying policy. Every day this week, there's been fights. Today, there was another physical assault between 2 students. It's being addressed with administrators within the school, guidance counselors within the school. My concern is that you have children who may not be involved in the bullying, but they're witnessing it. Or now they're fearful to go to school. Or nothing is being done severe enough so these kids who are continuing to bully and assault, they're taking it as a joke. There was an incident in the beginning of the school year where a female assaulted another female, and the girl posted on social media that it was a joke. I have ISS today. Ha ha ha. They're not taking it seriously enough because the consequences aren't serious enough, and now it's escalating to a point where kids are actually getting physically hurt. So I'm happy to know that they're trying to increase the storage for the video cameras, but what is actually being done to address these issues within the school? I mean, I can't speak for elementary schools. I have a child in Haviland, and I'm very hesitant to even continue to go to FTR. I mean, I have a 4-year-old who is nicely sleeping on my lap, but I don't even want to have her pursue in this district when nothing is even being done or addressed, and it's actually being downplayed by guidance counselors. It's not a bullying issue, it's a conflict. When you have students who are going to guidance counselors for guidance and for help, saying this is an issue that I'm being presented with, and I can get into specifics if you need, and they're being told it's not a bullying issue because they don't want it labeled that way, it's a conflict. Regardless, kids are getting injured on school property. It's not a one-time isolated incident. It's continuing to happen, and it's continuing to escalate. So I'd like to know what exactly, we have a code of conduct, so how is this being enforced to ensure that all students are remaining safe in school? We're trusting you as parents with our students and children for 8 hours a day, but they're getting injured on your time.
Okay. Would anybody else like to address the board? May I have a motion to return to open session, please?
So moved? Second.
Any discussion on that? All in favor? Okay, I'm going to give it a shot here. It's very difficult for us as board members to hear that kind of information without any background from administrators. So it's going to be difficult for us to answer your question, at least from my point of view. I don't know if the superintendent wants to say anything at this point. The board does and is concerned about bullying in all of the schools, and we expect that to be handled in the proper way. As you say, we do have a code of conduct, so we'll have to do some research on that. I hate to say, I can't give you an answer, but I can't give you an answer at the moment. So what I would like is for the superintendent to look into it, and I would like if you could give us your full name and maybe an email address, and I would also like the Haviland administration to get into this loop so that we can hear what they have to say as well as what you've said. And like I said, we do take this seriously, so I would expect for us to hear what your investigation would be. So, and thank you for coming. I mean, it's part of a school district is dealing with conflict and bullying, and also with dealing with parents who are concerned, and rightly so that we can have a conversation so that this doesn't get out of hand, and so we can find out what exactly is going on. And like I said, without more information, I can't tell you what that's now, but we will find out. All right. Anybody else want to say anything on that? Okay. And that brings us to board subcommittees. We have any subcommittees that met? We had the audit committee met, and later on we have the results of the internal audit and the what do you call that thing?
The corrective action plan?
Inventory,
For the external
crisis
audit.
inventory plan. Yeah, thank you. Any other subcommittees?
Yes, the Energy Committee had a meeting earlier this week.
Yep.
It passes Tuesday, yes. Had a very informative presentation by our bus, the vendor in which we purchase our buses from, talking about comparison of diesel, gasoline, and propane buses from energy consumption, energy cost, as well as maintenance cost. So a lot of information, and based on what they provided, there's not a big difference between all three.
That's interesting.
And also from an environmental standpoint, the bus, the emissions from these buses are much better than they were, so there's not even a huge difference in the carbon footprint either. So but it would cost changing from whatever you have to something new, then is A, it's going to cost you money, and B, may not do you any good. Is that what you're saying? There would be some cost changing, if we were to, one of the examples was propane, for instance. We don't currently have propane storage, so there'd be a cost of establishing propane filling station. On the other hand, if we were to go to more gasoline-fueled buses and away from diesel, we have both diesel and gasoline storage, and at some point it would make sense perhaps that we would swap the tanks. So we would, where our larger storage now is diesel, in the future perhaps it would be gasoline. So there, no cost associated, no significant cost, large capital cost. So more information, just that we've got to continue to look at a
Okay.
few more things. And
That's good, so we've discussed this a couple of times.
Yep.
and so it's
Yeah, it was
that's good
good.
to know.
George did a good job of pulling it together, and is it Leonard Bus Sales made the presentation, so.
At some point, is there going to be a discussion of the technical support of the vehicles? Do we need to retrain technicians we have currently working on our, whatever, the gasoline we got, or the diesel or propane? Doesn't seems to me there's got to be enough differences between those engines and their servicing that we would like to keep our technicians current and up to date on whatever we're going.
That was part of the discussion. I mean, it was brought up what the, how much training it took to make the transition from one to the other. The thought is moving to gasoline, probably not much training. Propane would take more training and perhaps some equipment as well.
Perry doesn't mention that it was a 3-hour meeting.
Ah,
In depth, did I say that it was in depth?
In depth.
Yes.
Yeah.
There was a lot of detail.
All
There
right.
was.
You got snowed out of your other one, then, right?
Lunch and dinner?
The Dutchess County School Board
Yeah, that
Association.
got snowed out.
Well, we did and we didn't. We had to reschedule it. We actually had it Sunday afternoon in order to make up, because
Did
one
that
of the
get
things...
sent out?
What's that?
Because I wanted to go to that one. I was going to go, because it was contracts.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's...
It got sent out, and I missed, and I drove my head.
Yeah, so that actually has been rescheduled for February. That
Yeah, that part was-
presentation,
Oh,
that
okay,
presentation
okay.
is being
All right, good.
rescheduled for February. But I would remind, while I've got the mic, that this Saturday at 10 a.m. is the legislative breakfast, in which, and I understand that we have all of the county legislative leaders committed to be there, or a representative be there. So,
Okay.
and that is going to be at the Marriott Courtyard down by F.B. Morris Estate. That's at 10 a.m. Come at 9:30. There'll be coffee and Danish. It's open to board members.
Can
And the
go
hope
have
is
breakfast
to...
and leave, or-
What's that? No, you can't have it and
Oh,
leave. It's
sorry.
not to go. There's no drive-up windows. But we're optimistic, that we're going to have a good
It
turnout.
actually is a big
and-
thing, because they've had it years ago, and then nobody showed up.
Right. So this is a
Legislative.
revamping of that.
It's a big deal.
And
Yeah.
we're hoping, and actually with Elliot Garcia's help, I am actually going to be making a presentation on some facilities-related concerns for
Excellent.
public education, so.
Excellent, excellent.
And the SAFE Committee met this morning, and you'll see probably a proposal coming from us about going to universal locks across the district. An example, Haviland has multiple
Okay.
master keys they have to go through. And one of the ones, even though we're locking our classrooms, but they want to go to a speed locks. And also emergency response, having one key to help them get in will speed up any emergency situations.
So when you say we're going, you're asking the district to go, because we got to, I assume
Yes.
it costs money.
It will cost money, and you'll be seeing a proposal coming through
Okay.
they're working on.
All right. Probably peanuts compared to the rest of the stuff. But, we have the
Is
district,
that smart bond eligible?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
Just so you know.
It's like, oof, light bulb went off.
so do we need the DLT recommendation?
No, that's actually was
That
woven into
woven
the
in, right? Okay.
CSR, that's fine.
And that brings us to the board discussion on the retreat. Did we get a consensus on Doodle? I didn't think we did, right?
Can
All right.
Can I say something? So the dates on the doodle are all for January. When I talked to Jason last week, he said he doesn't have any dates in January available.
That makes it simple to do it again, then. So we're going to do it for
And
February?
then he did tell me he's not available February 8th, but he would be,
Okay.
so right now he's available on any other day in February.
I mean, why don't we do that? For January, I had a number of concerts that I didn't want to miss. So, I mean, I would change them if it's, but now January's done, so we'll see what February brings. But we were close, too. Didn't we have five, a bunch, and we were close. Well, okay. All right, so that, we're going to redo for February, and that's the end of that. Okay.
And could we include Jason on the poll?
Yeah, I think it should be, I think at least, Linda, Jason, and I, and Jay should narrow down some dates, because if he's not available, there's no sense in putting it on a doodle poll. The same for,
true.
if Linda's not available, we can't do it without Linda either. So we'll coordinate and then narrow it down and then get it out.
Okay. That brings us to the consent agenda. May I have a motion for the consent agenda, please?
So moved. Second.
All right, Barry and Dan. Any discussion on that? All in favor? Opposed? Thank you. You just walked away?
Mike's not here. I just have to mark it. Bear with me a minute.
Oh. Okay. Got it. Okay. So that brings us to, may I have a motion for special education placements, please?
So moved.
Second.
Dan? Any discussion? Dan?
I've reviewed the pack and recommend its adoption as presented.
Okay. All in favor? Opposed? Thank you. I have a motion for 10.2 service agreement for DC Regional Chamber of Commerce.
So moved.
Second.
And Denise, Perry and Denise. Any discussion on that?
I'd just like to hear, since this actually has happened, do we feel that it was the success that we expected it to? And what did we learn from it? And would we do it again? And should we consider doing it with our own people? What did they add to it, I guess is what I'm looking for.
It was a tremendous success.
Okay.
I was over
Yeah,
there,
it
but
was-
also
it
from
was,
what I heard from everyone
I
who
was there.
attended.
Yeah, I know.
Oh, so was Mike, too.
Yeah, and we've certainly done things like that in the past. What was great is that what you can see is not a great cost. They did really everything. So
Okay.
there was building level work in terms of freeing up the gym space, and, there was some coordination on our end, but it's a tremendous amount of work and coordination and reaching out to people, and they did a terrific job. So certainly, I know the staff at FDR would like to do it again. Haviland has reached out and said they would love to do it.
I would assume they have wider contacts, too, in order to get.
It's something they do, and it's the first time, you see this little contract here, and, we didn't have it in a timely way, but now it's here. But there were some unexpected costs, so, that we covered. So this contract, this was the first time they did just the fair without this much more expanded project that they offer to districts. So it was something I asked that they do for us, because the rest of the program looked a lot like Avid, and we really didn't have a need for that. So, but this was a piece that we didn't have, or that would take a lot of work. So there were some unexpected costs around furniture and getting breakfast, getting food for all the people. It wasn't a lot, and we covered it in my budget. But going forward, if we're going to do it, I would budget for the whole thing in one. So it would be a little more.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think, after seeing it the first time, we could all give some feedback when we work with them to plan it again. There were some local businesses that I was surprised weren't there, and maybe some trades not represented, and it went both ways. I thought it was absolutely touching to see that the Hyde Park librarian was there, because, it was a career fair, and that is a viable career, and I would never have thought of inviting the local librarian. But then there were some other big misses where, some industry's not there. So, but the chamber is very easy to work with, but I thought for a first-time event, the only thing I'd skip is that photo shoot thing. That was...
Oh, yeah, going around. That was
Yeah.
like,
I would just like to add, too, that I spoke to a lot of the students that attended it, and it was really well received. And they really liked the options that were there. They liked seeing it and walking around, and I think it would be worthwhile just to do it again for the students. You know, again, like just to get their reactions to it. They loved it.
I have to admit, my question has nothing to do with cost as much as that has to do with opportunity. You know, did we capitalize on the opportunity, and what did we learn from it, and how do we grow on it? Because I think it's a
pretty good
huge
mix. I thought it was a pretty good mix. I mean, you all the way from Williams Lumber to a technical school in Ohio, wherever the heck it was.
Lincoln.
It was really interesting, too. So I think I can see where students would have liked that, because it wasn't just one thing like, okay, you're going to go to college, then you're going to do this, you're going to do that. There was other opportunities. You want to work in a bank, you want to work in insurance, all that.
I think, Leah, did you get a chance to pop down?
Yeah, I did all the greetings and the.
That's what I thought.
Everything.
Yeah.
We had everything from clowns to the people who map out the area.
Yeah.
So,
And you think that did the sense you got from your colleagues, they
enjoyed the free candy that was
There you go.
a chance to escape class.
Of course it was
but
worth
I think I know people had some in-depth conversations with people that were interested, their careers they were interested as well. So I think it was a good experience.
Good, thanks.
Cool.
Oh.
All right, all in favor? Opposed? Thank you. Can I have a motion for the corrective action plan from the external audit, please?
So moved?
Second.
You got that? Any discussion?
It looks like a lot of simple stuff that just,
It was, yeah.
Yeah,
It
you know,
was,
it
in terms of
cleanup.
correction, this is probably the least corrective that we've had in a decade, probably.
Can I brag about Barb?
Yes,
So
sure.
this was Barb's first full year as treasurer, and it's the first year since I've been here, even including when I was treasurer, that we didn't have any corrective action plan or any need for one based on the audit of the district finances. The
Right.
corrective action plan is only for the
For
student activity
extracurricular.
clubs.
Yeah. No, it was wonderful. Keep up the good work, really. All in favor? Opposed? Thank you. Have a motion for the first consideration of policy updates, please.
so moved?
Second.
Any discussion on that?
A lot of good work.
Hmm?
A lot of good work.
Yeah. Still a lot to do. All in favor? Opposed? Thank you. All right. I have a motion for the budget development calendar that was supplied by Linda. That was really nice.
So moved?
Second.
Terry and Jeff. Perry. Any discussion on that? Then it looked
Work ahead.
like,
A lot of work ahead.
The only thing is those, do we need an extra? I'm glad to see that there was like, in case we need an extra day, this is the day. So, all in favor of that? Opposed? Thank you. Okay, I have a motion for vendor agreement pre-referendum with CS Arch for
So
the
moved.
capital project.
Second.
Perry and Mike. Any discussion? You had a concern.
Yeah, and I'm sorry that I did not get a chance to look at this in time to pull out my old documents, but does this match what their original proposal was
For the pre-ref amount?
for the pre-ref?
Yes.
Okay.
When we actually had our attorney draw up this contract, normally we ask the vendor to give us a contract and we have our attorneys review it.
Mhm.
But because we wanted to turn it around quickly, we had our attorneys draw it up, and I asked them to use the number that was the suggested the 57,000 from the
Right.
originally proposed contract.
Okay. Okay. The mileage is just,
So, in the contract, there's a reference to I think it's the Appendix A or Exhibit A.
Mileage.
Which, right. And when I had talked to our attorney, I said, well, what is that intended for? And he said, oh, that's for the reimbursable cost. He's like, you'll probably just take the amount from the original proposed, or the list from the original proposed contract and add it in. But I didn't want to do that without talking to Mr. Woodside, and we had the same language in the Palumbo contract. So I reached out to both Palumbo and CS Arch. CS Arch said if they did charge us for anything, it would only be for mileage at the current IRS rate. And they wouldn't charge us for any other reimbursable costs unless the referendum passes and there's any other cost
once they go
after.
into design
Once they go
phase,
into it,
they're,
right.
yeah.
Right, and then Palumbo, so Palumbo's contract, which I think is next, refers to Exhibit A, but there is none, because they said they wouldn't charge us for anything in addition to their pre-ref fee.
So is mileage listed in their original proposal?
Is it transportation costs?
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I just find that odd, if putting it nicely. It just seems like to pay to have someone, I mean, who has any idea of tracking that? I mean, think about how many times they've been to the site already.
Well,
and
it's only going forward.
It's only going forward.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. To me, it's just an odd, and I reached out to a few architects that I've worked with, and it's not something we typically pay, but, in the scheme of things, it's not a lot of money, but.
Okay. Any other comments? All in favor? Opposed? Thank you. A motion for the vendor agreement pre-referendum for the Palumbo Group, please.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion on that? All in favor? Opposed? Thank you. That brings us back to, have a motion to enter public participation, please.
So moved.
Second.
Mike and, no? Any discussion on that? All in favor? Opposed? If anybody would like to address the board, wow, look at that.
Leap to the front.
I had never seen anybody that excited just to get up there at the mic.
I needed to stand up. Hi, Bobby Goodman. I'm just coming up to let you all know that the Harlem Wizards are coming back to play the Bad Apples on February 15th at the high school. Mr. Heater has already agreed to play and join our Bad Apple team again. So if any of you are interested or want to join in the fun, even cheerlead, all positions are available. It'll be 7 o'clock at the high school, and there's no school on Friday, so it'll be like a Friday night. So come on out. It's a great time. Thanks.
Cool, thanks, Bobby. Would anybody else like to address the board? May I have a motion to close public participation, please?
Like to nominate.
So moved.
So moved.
Second.
You got Jeff and Mike?
Yes.
Jeff and Mike? Any discussion on that? All in favor? Opposed? Thank you.
I can't get the comment on it? I have
I would encourage
request.
anybody that wants to make a fool of himself, like me.
I just
get out
I
there.
just have a request, Doug, that you start getting in shape now for that, because, it's not the lead-up time, it's the 3 weeks we lose after the game that hurts.
I played 2 hours of racquetball this afternoon, so.
All right.
And I'm hurting too.
Last I looked, the racquetball wasn't quite the same size as the basketball.
Yeah, well, it takes a lot of energy, though. All right. I don't believe there's any other matters. Do you have other
I
matters?
worked 2 hours this afternoon.
You worked 2 hours?
Yeah, I didn't have time to play racquetball.
And you got paid for 8, huh?
Yeah.
You worked 2 hours and you got paid for 8. Hey, that says, what a deal. And I don't have any other matters. Does anybody else have?
Actually, the one thing I'd like to mention, I received an interesting email within the last week or so, and it was an anonymous email that asked if there were going to be any openings for seats on the board, and specifically asked if I was planning on running again. And
There's interest out there. There's interest out there?
Well, so, but the interesting thing is that they didn't sign it, so I don't know who it was. And I only get about 200 emails a day in my inbox. And I don't know where I put the email, because I would like to respond to it. And I guess maybe I'm using this as a response, that I would encourage anyone who has an interest in promoting public education in Hyde Park to run. And it doesn't matter whether I'm going to seek the board again or not, I would encourage people to run. There are 2 seats that will be contested, are available.
Right.
I would love for there to be people to step up to the plate and run. So, if you sent me the email and you never hear from me, this is the message. I haven't made a decision yet, but I encourage you to run, and I encourage anyone else to run.
I'll sign it next time.
Okay, if you send.
Who else is
So, that's my public service announcement.
Perry and Steve? Is it Steve? Are you up this year? Who's up this year?
Perry and Steve.
Perry and Steve? Oh, okay.
I'm going to assert my right
Wait
to
a
remain
minute,
silent.
wait a minute. We can't
Never-
lose one side of the board table. Come on.
Neither confirm nor deny.
Okay, we do have a need for an executive session.
Yeah, short, very short.
Very
one.
short. So
Just because we
may,
had the work session first, so we haven't had one yet.
do we have to vote on that?
You have to motion it.
Yeah, okay. May I have a motion to enter executive session, please?
Do we need to appoint an interim clerk before we?
Oh, wait, as long
Yeah,
as you're going to be sure.
because we have to close.
Oh, you want the,
I
okay.
can wait. I'm okay to wait.
You're okay? All right. She'll do it as soon as we
Okay.
do. But thanks, Steve. Always good to be reminded. So do we have a vote? All in favor?
We don't have a motion.
We didn't have a
We
motion.
had a motion.
Or a second.
I move.
Nope.
Oh, I asked for a motion. That's right.
Yeah, you did.
All right.
So?
So move.
Second.
Now, any discussion? All in favor? We're now in executive session.
Opposed?
All you out there, thank you very much for
Opposed?
coming tonight.